So just by way of introduction, Ian Bradshaw, Cattle Vet Services in Busselton. I've been in that area for about 20 years. I grew up down the road in Manjimup. I think I don't know what you guys' experience is, but certainly in the 20 years I've been in practice in Busselton, it's the most difficult season I've seen for sure. I worked over east during a few droughts over there, and it's really interesting the contrast between what happens in the East Coast when they have a drought and what happens here when we have a seasonal, it's a seasonal drought. At the end of the day, we have the most reliable rainfall, I think, probably in the whole country. But, we still are severely impacted by seasons like this one. And it's quite different. I think it's a little early to be saying that we're recovering from drought. It's all okay. Like, there's some green stuff out there, but there's not that much of it. And it looks like we might still have a pretty tough season ahead. Okay, so I thought maybe a better title for me at least would be talking a little bit about drought resilience and dealing with this vitamin F deficiency. Everybody's familiar with vitamin A, D, A, B, C, D, and E. Yeah. If you're follow the nags, there's this thing in the racehorse industry called vitamin P. It comes in a little bottle like this. I've no idea what it does, but they pay a lot of money for it, right? Vitamin F, very simply, in veterinary terms, is food. Vitamin F is the most important thing on the menu at the moment, and it's the most challenging thing to find. Okay, sorry. So just from my perspective, I think there's a few ongoing challenges that it's talking about. I want to look at the light, not the darkness. But there are some significant challenges in this season. I haven't seen much evidence of an animal welfare crisis anywhere at this stage, but it's fair to say that out there may be a few circumstances where people are genuinely in a hole where they don't have the capacity to feed their animals, and they may be looking at some animal welfare issues. I think something that's on everybody's mind is fertility. It'll be one of the most common questions that crops up for me year after year. All our clients want to know is how everyone else's preg-test rates are going every year. And every year, it's always the same. And they're really disappointed when they don't hear that it's up and down and all over the place. But the reality is that, we have a very reliable season. We're all have very similar calving systems and so forth. And our fertility normally is absolutely bang on the average, 87% year in, year out if we added it up. This year, I think, is the closest we've come to a season that might challenge that, I reckon. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see pregnancy rates in cows below 80%. For you guys, especially over this way, I thought grass tetany might be worth talking about. I think it's a bit high risk this year, and we can talk about a whole lot of other things if we have time, or if you've got particular questions, just fire them at me, that's fine. Worms and lice, calf stress and disease always comes up, and you may have some questions about early weaning to manage some of the cow condition issues we're dealing with. So just a very quick recap of the nutrient requirements of our cows. So in a normal year, we might have a 600 kilo Angus cow that's this time of year might have a 2-month-old calf on her, and typically she's losing about half a kilo a day. So typically between calving and joining, she's losing about a body score. And we'd like that calf to be growing at roughly a kilo a day. To do that, she needs 120 megajoules of energy every day, with an energy density of about 9 megajoules per kilo of dry matter that she's eating. She needs about 12% crude protein in a diet, and she can consume about 12 kilos. She could probably consume up to maybe 14 of the right quality feed. If she's eating a lot less than 10 kilos, she's just not going to get anywhere near this 120 megajoules of energy, right? So that's our cows. For a 15-month-old heifer that we're not far off joining, maybe target of, say, 375 kilo live weight, We'd like her to be gaining about 0.7 kilos a day. She's going to need 90 megajoules of energy to achieve that. A little bit higher protein requirement, and she can't eat as much. She just physically can't eat as much. She might be eating, 8.5, 9 kilos of dry matter. Okay, so she needs a little bit better quality feed than those cows. And these cows with calves on them, they need substantially better quality feed than the dry cows that haven't calved yet. Okay. Okay, so what have we been feeding? Everybody here, I'm guessing, makes a fair bit of hay, and that can be quite variable in quality, but it's typically 8 to 9 megajoules of energy per kilogram. Crude protein might be around 10%, and it's 90% dry matter. We're not going to meet the energy requirements of a lactating cow with just pasture hay. So when there's no green feed on the ground, those cows are going to be going backwards more than we think if they're just getting hay at this time of year. If we look at pasture silage, it's more likely to be 10, maybe up to 11 megajoules of energy. It's more likely to be higher in protein, and the dry matter is going to be highly variable depending on, how wet it was when you cut it, and that can vary anywhere between 30 and 50% dry matter. Oat and hay. A few of you probably have been buying truckloads of oat and hay. Fantastic stuff. Cows love it. It's highly palatable. They clean it up. It's usually higher energy density than pasture hay. Protein levels typically lower, typically about 8%. It's great stuff. The problem with oat and hay is that it doesn't have anywhere near enough protein to meet the requirements of a lactating cow. She needs 12% crude protein in her diet, and oat and hay won't deliver it. You won't be able to buy oat and hay that can go close to 12% crude protein. I'm not sure about up here, but a few clients that have been buying pellets as well, and they're highly variable depending on the manufacturer. There's quite a range of quality, energy density and protein density in there, but typically they might be, this is pretty close to what easy beef pellets are, about 11.5 megajoules of energy, 14% crude protein, and aside from the fact that it's maybe not meeting all of their fibre requirements, a lactating cow is going to perform fantastically on these. She will send you broke doing it, like she'll gobble them up, but it works really well. So I guess in summary, pasture hay for lactating cows is not going to meet our requirements. Pasture silage will. You've probably used all that up already. Oat and hay delivers the energy you need, but it's not going to deliver enough protein. So you get, ideally they need to be supplemented with some extra protein to get where you want to be. So in terms of pasture growth rates and what's coming in front of us, May to July, normally this is numbers for Bustleton. Kirrup's going to be a little lower because it's colder. In a normal year, you might be growing 20 to 25 kilograms of dry matter per hectare per day. This year, I suspect it's going to be significantly lower than that. And so when we've got cows that that lactating cow needs to be eating, 12 kilos of dry matter a day. So we can grow 20 kilos of dry matter per hectare per day. But it's this high, and she's not going to utilise every blade of grass that you grow. So, you have to build this wedge of feed up in front of you before you can actually consume it. So cows running around on pasture aren't going to get a lot of dry matter intake until you've accumulated, say, up 700 kilos and above in dry matter on your pastures. So pretty simple math, 700 kilos divided by 25, it's going to take quite a while to get there. So, it's while there's all this green stuff out on the ground, the cows are have no chance of meeting their nutritional requirements until that's got up and at a bit of bulk. And, that's not rocket science at all. But, I guess in these tough times when hay's costing you upwards of $400 a tonne, pellets it might be costing you $600 a tonne landed. It's pretty attractive to switch them off and just tell the cows to get out there and get on with it. But it's not going to work for you. So they still need a bit of tucker. Okay, so just to recap quickly, ideally 600 kilo cow this time of year, she might be losing half a kilo of managed body weight loss. She's gone from a condition score of about 4 down to about 3 at joining. The calf's growing nicely at a kilo a day, and we've got a net gain of about half a kilo a day this time of year. So we've got this managed weight loss, we've got normal health and good fertility. In a tough year, like this year in particular, if we're not meeting those energy requirements as we normally are, that 600 kilo cow, she might be holding her own and going okay, but she's going to be losing a bit more weight. Maybe 3/4 of a kilo a day. Some cows, if you're not giving them anything at all, they'll be losing more than that. And they might be going from a body condition score of 4 at calving down to 2.5 or below at joining. So losing, a fair bit more weight. The calf's not doing very well either, and that calf might only be growing at half a kilo a day. And I'm certainly seeing that this year around the place, is that some calves are looking pretty shabby, and it's, they're just not getting enough milk. So instead of a net gain of half a kilo a day, we've got a net loss of 1/4 of a kilo a day. It doesn't sound like too much, but that's 3/4 of a kilo of live weight over a 90-day period. So it adds up. We've got excess weight loss in our cows. We've got stressed health in both cows and calves, and we've got potentially compromised fertility. So are our cows going to get back in calf or not? So ideally for normal fertility, we want our cows to be body score 3 or above, and on a rising plane of nutrition. And that's not easy to do when we calve in autumn, run into a dry start to winter, and not enough feed in front of them. So we talked about the difference between, half a kilo a day body weight loss and 3/4 of a kilo. One thing I've thought about recently really is that, weight loss in cows this time of year is not linear. When a cow's mobilising fat to produce milk, it's relatively efficient because the energy density of fat is really high. It's like 3 times higher than muscle. And so when she's mobilising those fat reserves to meet her calf's needs and lactational needs, every kilo of body weight loss is delivering a certain amount of milk. But once she's depleted that and she starts to mobilise more and more muscle to generate energy to feed to produce milk and feed a calf, that becomes less efficient as you're losing muscle. So once their fat reserves have depleted, they're at risk of falling off a cliff with weight loss. And I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but your cows will be going along okay, managed weight loss, looking all right, and then all of a sudden they really start to look a bit rubbish. And that's because suddenly that weight loss is less efficient. They're still trying to pump out heaps of energy for that calf, and it's costing her a lot in body weight. So next point is nutrition impacts the quality of the egg that you're trying to fertilise at joining way back, like 60 days beforehand. It's having an impact on the fertility of that egg ovulating. It's also affecting the hormone levels in those cows. And, that goes right back to, just after calving, right through to weeks after calving. They'll potentially have an impact on the fertility of those cows. And, there's no easy solution when you can't buy this stuff for love nor money, but vitamin F is far and away. Food is far and away the most important thing. You can't find a cure in a bottle or in an injection or a lick supplement. They need tucker. Okay, so which cows are highest risk? Paul, you're pretty familiar with these sort of cows. First cross cow with a couple of big sappy calves on her, you wouldn't want too many of those running around just at the moment. I drove past yours earlier today, Carol, and they're looking fantastic. But I appreciate how much hay you've had to jam down their throats to achieve that. Okay, so in terms of which are your highest risk groups, obviously your first calvers. I find the second calvers are the most impacted in any herd, even in good years. And then we've got our old cows and our lame cows and the cows we probably should have culled last year. This year, I think our early calvers are probably at higher risk than the later calvers because they've just been deprived of feed for longer. They've been lactating pretty hard with, not enough energy coming in. Whereas our later calvers, their energy requirements in the most recent months haven't been as high. They'll start coming into their peak lactation soon and start to get hammered, but at least they've got some feed coming in front of them. With our second calvers, the reason why these guys are impacted the most, when our heifers calve, generally we calve our heifers in really good order. They're well grown, they've got good body condition, they calve down, we look after them, and usually they've gone back in calf before they've had the real impact of that first lactation. So they might not be feeling the real impact on their body until 4 to 5 months into lactation. You've already got them in calf at that stage. So the first calver's performance often it's the best performance of a lot of herds, repro performance. The second calvers are the ones that are impacted more because they've been through that first calf, they're still trying to grow, they've been feeding this calf as best they can, they run into their second summer as a cow, they're now a cow, the attention's gone off them, they're just another cow that's got to make their way in the herd, and they struggle through that a little bit. They're still growing, trying to grow in that second summer. They may not come into calving in quite as good body condition as they were when they were heifers, and when they calve, they're suddenly lactating more than they were as the first calver as well, and so they drop condition more rapidly. So I usually see the worst pregnancy rates in a lot of herds in the second calvers. So we need to make a bit more effort to look after those ones, I reckon. These second calvers, they're also the most they're the herd of mob of cows that you're most invested in your herd. They've cost you heaps of money up until this point. You've had to rear them for an extra year, get them in calf as a heifer, got them through that, all the risk of calving issues as heifers. You've been up late at night checking them and so forth. They get through their second calf. They're still not at their peak performance at this stage. They're still trying to grow. They're still not going to produce the best calf on the place. But that's all in front of them. The next, third, fourth and fifth calves is when you make money out of them. So they're the ones you're most invested in. They're the ones you need to look after. All right. So what can we do about it? We can, facetiously, I'll say find, vitamin F. I know that's really difficult to find, and we don't all have big fat wallets and endless checkbooks, but now's not the time, I suppose, to be cutting them off and just saying that enough's enough. We might need to prioritise our resources around this feed we've got available, and we might have to make some sacrifices about who gets the better quality feed and which don't. And obviously, like I said, those young cows, they're the ones that you want to try and look after the best in your herd. Graham's going to talk a bit about deferred grazing and the benefit of holding off as long as you can to generate more feed in front of you through winter. This one's a little controversial. I think, should you join for longer this year or not? I think it's very likely that fertility is going to be impacted in some herds, and you can either suck that up and accept the fact that you might only have 75% pregnancy rates in your mobs of cows, or you can maybe think about leaving the bulls in for another 3 weeks or whatever. Some people will shake their head and think that's a ridiculous thing to do. We've been told for years and years that, you've got to shorten up your calving period to make it as efficient as possible. But at the end of the day, you don't make money out of no calves. You know what I mean? And there's only one place an empty cow can go.
That simple.
The alternative to that, Ian, is not putting the bulls in so early either.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing I haven't got on this list, but I think this year is a fantastic year. It is a perfect opportunity to reevaluate your time of calving and decide what is the most appropriate time of calving for your particular enterprise. And there's no simple answer for that. I think every farm is a little different, and I find time of calving is driven by lots of factors other than profit or necessarily the best utilisation of feed. It's often about other things going on or off farm. Heaps of different reasons why we calve when we do. But this year is a perfect opportunity to think about when is the best time of year to calve or not. And, it used to be in WA that there was this driving requirement to produce heavy calves and turn off heaviest. The heavier calves got the good money, but that's all turned around. Like Coles and Woolies don't want heavy calves anymore. Feedlotters want calves that they make profit out of as well. The calf operator has got to generate income from calves, but the vast majority of our calves now go into feedlots, and these heavy calves don't suit the market. We've done all this fantastic work with genetics. We can produce these beautiful calves, but at the end of the day, they need to be finished, and there needs to be opportunity to, add value to these calves in a feedlot in a certain period of time and finish them at a light enough weight that they suit the market. Yes, think about your joining. Think about the options of maybe leaving the bulls in a little bit longer, giving your cows a little bit more time to recover after calving. If you were thinking about putting your calving back a bit anyway, it's not a bad year to do it. There's nothing wrong with joining your cows a bit longer, pre-testing and deciding, don't let poor reproductive performance impact your stocking density the following year. That's what I'm trying to get at. If you preg-test and you've got more pregnant cows than you need, sell the bottoms, sell the culls, sell the old cows. That's fine. Righto, don't breed your culls. I see there's way too many people won't cull cows because they're in calf. And the easy answer for that is don't breed them in the first place. If you know cows are lame or struggling to keep up, and you really want to get rid of them, they got bad feet or whatever, don't put the bulls in with those ones. Put them aside somewhere. Okay. Not generally an option this time of year. You've probably decided how many heifers you are going to keep, and that's all. That time's passed. But I don't think there's anything wrong with joining more heifers than you really need. And I think there's actually good opportunities to diversify your income stream a little bit and maybe sell some PTIC heifers. And it's great insurance for if fertility doesn't go the way you think it's going to go in your mature cow herd. If you've got more heifers pregnant than you really need, that's fine, you can sell them. If you've had more empty cows than you were expecting, you can keep some of those heifers. I won't talk too much about this, but it comes up occasionally. Can I give my cows some hormonal treatments or something to get them cycling and get them pregnant again? If you got some questions around that, hit me later. And if your feed situation is severe enough, you might want to consider a herd reduction, a strategic herd reduction to reduce your stocking density through this winter and into the next spring, which there's every chance that it's going to be a pretty challenging winter and spring ahead of us. Okay, so looking forward a little bit, one thing that is always beneficial is to preg-test as early as you practically can, and make decisions about cows that are going to stay, cows that are going to go, and so forth as early in the season as you can. You don't have to sell them then, but at least you know what you're dealing with, and you can make decisions early. You need to In cows that have had their body condition run down more than usual, you need to recover that body condition somehow, and the way to do that is just manage your time of weaning. So if you've got particular groups of cows, second calvers are a perfect example. If they, assuming they're back in calf, if their body condition's not where you need them to be, you need to wean them earlier and give them an opportunity to, partition some of that high quality feed into body condition. You need to cull ruthlessly in years like this, I reckon. There's no room for passengers and there's no room for dead cows. You can't make profit out of dead cows, hey? Righto. I think, has anybody got hay or silage left in the shed? You have. Wow. Don't tell everybody. Don't tell them where you live. We used an enormous amount of silage and hay that we weren't probably expecting this year, and we're going to, everyone's the wallet's empty, and everyone's going to have to make more hay and silage next year. So really focus on doing as good a job as you can next year. You need to make it, you need to count it, and you need to test it. It's really important to know the quality of the feed that you've got available and its cost in years where you have to ration it out. It doesn't matter when you got heaps, and your feed budget needs to be just a roll of hay per cow per year. Away you go. When you have to really strategically allocate that conserved feed, that expensive feed, to manage tough seasons, then the quality and the cost is really important. So feed budgeting. A lot of guys, just work on a traditional amount, like maybe a roll of hay per cow per year, or a roll and a half per cow per year, depending on their place. Does everyone not have that rough rule of thumb in their head when they think about how much they're going to need for every year? Is that a yes or a no? So I guess in that's okay in an average season where it's pretty consistent what you need year to year. You know what your stocking rate is. You know how much hay you feed out every year, and away you go. That's fine. But in really difficult years, it's really important to have a fine-tuned feed budget. And to do that, you need to know exactly how much food your cows are going to need every month or every week from this period to this period. You need to know the quality of it. You need to know how much it's cost you, because I've had heaps of clients that have spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars purchasing feeds that if they'd made a feed budget back in October last year, they may not have had to spend. It's cost us a huge amount of money. So if you do, and you can also work out if you feed budget early on, as soon as you've made all your hay and silage and you know what's going on going forward, you can make decisions about whether you need to buy extra. Do that early. Price of hay never goes down as the season goes on, it always goes up. So you can potentially buy it at a better price earlier in the season, and you can potentially pay on quality rather than just taking whatever truckload of hay you can get. Okay, so fine-tuning a feed budget saves thousands and thousands of dollars, especially in years like this. This is a little plug for Ruminate. It's a program that Jasani mentioned. It was developed by a couple of people that used to work for the Ag Department. So built in WA, originally for dairy farmers. It's been adapted now for beef. It's available. It's been used all over the world, but it was developed here in WA. It works really well in our system. It was designed for us to use, and it's free. Relatively simple to use, and it's a really good nutrition program to predict what your nutrient requirements are at various times of year. It's fantastic for helping you do a feed budget. There'll be some training courses later on in the year, and I'd thoroughly recommend it. It's well worth doing. Okay, so that's just on the feed stuff. I thought for you guys over here especially, it might be worth talking a little bit about grass tetany. Does everyone get a bit of grass tetany over here? Yep. I reckon the risk is higher this year because our cow conditions run down more than usual. It's so far it's pretty warm and balmy, and it's hard to believe when you walk out there that there'd be a risk of grass tetany traditionally associated with cold, horrible weather. Essentially, grass tetany is just low blood magnesium. Cows don't store magnesium in their body. It's something that's got to come in through their diet all the time. If they run low, you'll get downer cows, you'll get uncontrolled muscle tremors. It's called tetany for a reason, tetanic spasms. They're often very aggressive, cranky, hyper-alert cows. If they're not down, they might chase you up over the ute and around about sometimes. Seizures and death, and quite often they're just a sudden death, and there's a couple of cows with their toes up. It's usually your best cows on the place. They're high production, older cows that have run into this problem, and it's essentially just caused by the lactational demands for energy. It's often there's been some reason why there's been a drop in feed intake, and it's usually bad weather. It's always associated with high potassium in their diet, which is often unavoidable, and low fibre in their diet. So it's typically mid-July when cows are still running around on pretty short feed. There's heaps of potassium in there. The plants are sucking up all this potassium, trying to grow. Very often associated with southern slopes that are getting less sunlight on them, and it's usually just after a period of really bad weather where you may not have been able to get out to feed the cows because the weather was terrible, or they've just been under the trees sheltering and have stopped eating. Sometimes it might be when a cow's on heat as well and she's been running around looking for the bull, not worrying about stuff in her face. And it essentially, high potassium in the rumen competes and interferes with absorption of magnesium through the rumen wall. It's pretty straightforward, and it's always got low fibre implicated in there. If they've got plenty of fibre in their diet, you won't see magnesium deficiency. So I think we're going to have a higher risk of it this year just because of, feed's going to be shorter later into winter and the cow's condition is run down. So be prepared. Fibre generally fixes it. If you've got an impending issue with grass tetany, all you got to do is feed a bit more hay and you won't get any more clinical cases. So make sure you've still got a bit of hay in the shed. That's all I'm trying to say in July. Make sure you've got a few 4-in-1 flow packs on hand. It's a really good idea to confirm diagnosis if you get some sudden deaths in the middle of winter to make sure it is grass tetany and you're treating them, the best way. And it's pretty straightforward. We'd normally just suck a bit of fluid out of the eyeball to confirm grass tetany. So the magnesium levels in the eyeball will reflect for a day or so, will reflect what the blood magnesium levels have been. And there is, the Ag Department runs subsidised disease investigation programs for mortality events in WA at the moment. So you can get a heavily subsidised post-mortem done at any time really, but I would encourage you to do that if you get sudden deaths in winter. There's a few other mitigation strategies you can do if you really need to, but like I said, fibre generally fixes it. All right, so that's just a couple of things I wanted to talk about, but I'm happy for you to load me up with any questions if we've still got time, Jazani.
We're running late, but we can do a couple of questions.